What happens when Hollywood pours millions into a movie, only for it to crash and burn? We're diving into 15 of the biggest movie flops, including one film that managed to waste a mind-blowing $225 million. From disastrous CGI to storylines that went nowhere, you won't believe how far these movies fell from grace. Pairing Johnny Depp with Armie Hammer for a modern take on The Lone Ranger seemed like a recipe for success, but the result was one of Disney's biggest box office flops. Depp's portrayal of Tonto, overshadowing the actual Lone Ranger, didn't sit well with fans or critics. Add to that a meandering plot and criticism over Depp's casting, and it's no wonder this one flopped despite its big budget. Armie Hammer even blamed the critics for the movie's failure, but audiences were equally unimpressed. Before the infamous 2013 Lone Ranger flop, there was 1981's The Legend of the Lone Ranger, which was equally painful to watch. This attempt to revive the character fell flat with critics and audiences alike, thanks to its slow pacing and lack of excitement. Adding to the mess was a legal battle preventing actor Clayton Moore, the original Lone Ranger, from wearing his mask in public appearances, causing an uproar with fans. Stealth had everything going for it on paper. A star-studded cast with Jamie Foxx, Jessica Biel, and Josh Lucas, plus action-packed aerial combat scenes. But when the concept revolves around an AI fighter jet that goes rogue, things can get a little too out there for mainstream audiences. Critics weren't impressed, calling it a mashup of Top Gun and 2001, A Space Odyssey cliches. The film's generic plot and lack of originality tanked its chances, leaving Columbia Pictures with a hefty financial loss. Keanu Reeves leading a samurai epic sounds like a recipe for success, but 47 Ronin strayed too far from its historical roots, losing itself in CGI-heavy fantasy elements that didn't land with audiences. The film, based on the legendary story of 47 samurais seeking revenge for their master's death, was plagued with production issues and multiple re-edits. The result was a bloated narrative that lacked focus, leaving both critics and audiences unimpressed. While Reeves delivered his usual stoic performance, it wasn't enough to save the movie from becoming one of the biggest box office flops of 2013. Even the vastness of space couldn't save this Disney misfire from crashing hard. Mars Needs Moms had all the makings of a hit, a motion capture adventure about a boy rescuing his abducted mom from Martians. But the film fell into the uncanny valley of animation, making everything look just a bit too unsettling. And while it had a solid voice cast, including Seth Green and Joan Cusack, the weak storyline didn't help matters. Critics weren't impressed either, and with a Rotten Tomatoes score of just 37%, the movie quickly became one of Disney's biggest flops. Not all origin stories are destined for success, and Pan is proof of that. This prequel to the classic tale of Peter Pan aimed to reimagine the beginnings of Peter, Hook, and Neverland, but it missed the mark on several levels. While Hugh Jackman's performance as Blackbeard was memorable, the film's overstuffed plot and bizarre inclusion of modern songs, like Nirvana's "Smells Like Teen Spirit," left viewers scratching their heads. Final Fantasy movie was ahead of its time in terms of CGI, but unfortunately, it wasn't ahead of the curve when it came to storytelling. Based loosely on the beloved video game series, the film took audiences to a future Earth plagued by phantom-like aliens. While visually groundbreaking, the convoluted plot left fans of the games confused and disappointed. The absence of familiar elements from the source material only added to the frustration. Despite its technical achievements, the movie's failure was so severe, it led to the bankruptcy of Square Pictures. With a cast that includes Warren Beatty, Diane Keaton, and Goldie Hawn, you'd think Town & Country would have been a box office hit. Instead, it was a massive dud. The movie revolves around the love affairs of wealthy New Yorkers, but behind the scenes, things were a mess. Multiple rewrites and reshoots ballooned the budget, and the final product was a storyline that audiences found confusing and, frankly, not funny. With a Rotten Tomatoes score of 13%, this high-budget misfire was doomed from the start. You'd think adapting the Nutcracker into a 3D spectacle would be a hit, but the Nutcracker in 3D proved otherwise. The decision to throw in a Nazi allegory left both critics and audiences confused and more than a little disturbed. Add to that 3D effects that added no real value, and you've got yourself a massive box office bomb. This film holds a 0% on Rotten Tomatoes, and honestly, that says it all. Even the charm of Eddie Murphy couldn't save the adventures of Pluto Nash from bombing in spectacular fashion. Set on the moon in the year 2087, the story follows a nightclub owner who gets caught up in a battle with the lunar mafia. On paper, it sounds like it could have been a fun sci-fi romp, but the execution was anything but. With an uninspired script, miscast roles, and special effects that didn't impress, Pluto Nash became one of Hollywood's most infamous box office disasters. Even Murphy later admitted the film was a terrible mistake. Cutthroat Island aimed to bring swashbuckling adventure back to the big screen, but instead, it sank faster than a ship in a storm. With Geena Davis as a pirate seeking buried treasure, the film was riddled with cliches and failed to capture the magic of classic pirate tales. Its box office disaster led to the bankruptcy of Carolco Pictures and a major hit to director Rennie Harlin's career. Based on Ray Bradbury's short story, A Sound of Thunder could have been an intriguing sci-fi adventure, but it ended up being more laughable than anything else. With time-traveling hunters accidentally altering the course of evolution, the premise had promise, but terrible special effects and hammy performances buried the potential. Production issues, including major flooding on the set in Prague, didn't help either, turning what could have been a thrilling concept into a cinematic misfire. Remember this movie? Yeah, we're trying to forget too. Even though it starred Ben Affleck and Jennifer Lopez, who were the hottest couple in Hollywood at the time, nothing could save this train wreck. The mobster kidnapping storyline was a mess, and the lack of chemistry between Affleck and Lopez didn't help. Critics tore it apart, and audiences stayed far away. Lopez was reportedly so embarrassed she skipped the premiere altogether. Smart move. This is a war film so infamous for its failure that even Laurence Olivier tried to distance himself from it. The film tells the story of General Douglas MacArthur during one of the most devastating battles of the Korean War, but audiences found the execution melodramatic and the film itself disjointed. Despite its hefty budget for the time, this war epic couldn't pull in the crowds, making it one of the biggest box office bombs of the 1980s. With Sophia Loren and Alec Guinness in the lead, the fall of the Roman Empire had grand ambitions, but it ended up being a monumental failure. The film's attempt to capture the downfall of Rome was overcomplicated and way too long, leaving audiences uninterested in what felt like a history lesson. Despite its massive budget, it tanked at the box office and helped bankrupt the production company behind it.